There's a lot of waters up here, in case anyone wasn't aware, hiding behind the booth. Thank you, everyone, and welcome to my talk on software estimation. Yes, only one Chihuahua, but I'll build up to the 19. So, software estimation, something that all of us interact with at some point, whether we're actually involved in it, interpreting it, communicating them, and probably gives a fair number of us, even myself, a fair bit of anxiety, even as I am up here talking to you about software estimation. It's not something that I particularly enjoy in the moment, though it is something that I enjoy thinking about, talking about, and because it is so important to our day-to-day lives and our professions. So a little bit of background. I'm going to talk about software estimation from my experiences. I've been working in technology for a little over 20 years now, most of that in software, and a lot of that in consulting. So a lot of my software estimation is really informed by that. But the first thing that we really need to address, and everyone needs to accept, is that we are all bad at estimation. We're all bad at it. There is no one who is good at estimating. We can get better at it, but at the end of the day, we're all pretty bad at it, and we need to kind of level set that we're all going to go into that with that expectation. We're all bad at this. So if we're all bad at estimation, what is estimation? Why are we so bad at it? So when we talk about estimation, we're generally talking about one of these three things. And we're often conflating these terms when we're talking to each other about them. So it's important to start off with some shared terminology. Has been a theme this morning, or this afternoon now, I guess. So an estimate, it's a guess. You're trying to predict the future. You're trying to look into your crystal ball as best you can and try to guess what's going to happen and communicate that in some way. And we're all bad at that. None of us can predict the future yet. If any of us could, we wouldn't be sitting in this room. We'd be billionaires on some island somewhere, right? So it's a guess at the end of the day, and we're all bad at that. A target, it's a desired outcome. It might be, I want this feature for this much on this timeline. And again, gets conflated for an estimate sometimes. And then the other one, a commitment. A lot of times that's what gets confused. Commitment is a promise of what will happen. You're committing to something. You're saying this will be done by this point in time. You're no longer guessing. You're not guessing that, hey, I think it'll take this long, right? Which is an estimate. You're guessing, and we're bad at that. But we can't get to a commitment without guessing in the first place. And we often need a target in mind to make that commitment. So as we work through these things, and as we talk about them today, just keep in mind that it's okay to ask about these things too, right? Like if you're talking to someone and they ask you, hey, I need an estimate on this piece of work. Say, do you need an estimate or do you need a commitment? Because again, very important, and a lot of loaded terms in there that can really come back to bite you later on, and may have already in your career. So, estimates, targets, commitments, we're all bad at it. So, why go about this? What are we trying to do? What are we trying to control? At the end of the day, we're trying to control what we can in our day-to-day lives and try to give confidence, commitment. We're trying to sell people ideas. We're trying to get commitment on resources. We're trying to maybe have capital outlays, which take consideration early on of this magic triangle, a three-legged stool. You may have heard this before. Timeline, budget, and features. These are things that we can try to identify early on and control what we can early on. You might not be able to control any of these, but early on when you're trying to estimate things, make sure that you're understanding these things and that you are controlling them to the best of your ability. Because these things get sticky early on, especially when you're estimating. If someone comes to you and says, hey, I really need a web page built. Well, okay, when do you need it by? What kind of budget do you have in mind? What kind of features were you thinking about? All of these are questions you can ask before you ever even start to put pencil to paper or start to think about how you would actually build this technical thing. Oftentimes, what I fall into the trap of is I immediately start thinking of a solution. I immediately start thinking about the effort for that solution without ever having asked these three questions of someone. So, early on, you can really control your estimate. You can control some outcomes by asking these things early on in your estimating process. Because again, we're all really bad at estimating. There's a lot of risk, there's a lot of uncertainty. And the first probably actionable takeaway that you can have today to improve your estimates and understand that uncertainty and risk early on is that estimates should have a range. Ranges communicate risk. They communicate uncertainty. If you say to someone, I think that'll take 4 hours versus I think that'll take 4 to 40 hours, there is now a conversation in there. There's a conversation about, well, why? What would change in there? Or what is the uncertainty that you're facing that makes you say 4 to 40 hours or 4 to 400 hours? That might be a valid estimate. But we need to communicate estimates in that type of language. It's not an estimate if you give a single point estimate. If only because, again, estimates are generally wrong. Single point estimates are always wrong. If you say it'll be done in 40 hours and you get it done in 39 and a half, well, really close, but still wrong, right? If you say 4 to 50 hours and you come in at 32, well, you hit that right on the money, right? You hit your target. You hit your desired outcome by giving an estimate in a range. Now, I had the cone of shame up here on this dog, but not to shame you for estimates, but to talk about cones and uncertainty, right? Early on, you should have a wide range as you have small time-boxed activities to think through the activities you're about to go through to build a thing or to do a thing, and you think of ranges. They should be wide, and they should encapsulate the uncertainty and unknowns that you have before you. You should be comfortable saying, I don't know, or here are some options. And early on, that's going to be some really wide ranges, to the point you're probably going to be really uncomfortable talking to someone about that, right? Because, well, I don't know. It's really uncertain. I can't give you any level of certainty. And that's okay. It's an estimate early on. You haven't even gotten to a commitment yet. There are some things you can do to get to the commitment. But know that early on, make it a wide range. Give yourself some grace and some time to think about it. And then as you progress, you should be estimating throughout the life of a project or a product, and as you go. You should continue to revisit these estimates and refine them, because through the agility of our work, things change, right? We find out new things every day. We find out, oh, that assumption was wrong. We need to pivot a little bit. And we should revisit our estimates, and what you'll generally find is that those unknowns will get smaller and smaller, and your estimates should get tighter and tighter. And over time, if you graph that out, that should be a cone. Great book by Steve McConnell, Software Estimation, calls it the cone of uncertainty. And think of your estimates as a cone. Early on, these ranges need to be really wide. You need to communicate risk and unknowns and uncertainty and options. And as you're progressing and as you're actually starting to even deliver on a solution, that'll get tighter and tighter and smaller until you key in on exactly what you're going to deliver on. So that is probably takeaway number one on how to get better estimates, is actually include a range in your estimates. So why is there this variability? Why are we all bad at predicting the future? What are some sources of the error within our estimates that require us to give this range? So thinking through these things, right? You might have uncertain requirements. Have that all the time, right? There is no perfect specification. There are no perfect requirements. There's gonna be uncertainty, and you're gonna need to work to figure those things out. Sometimes that's handled in product phases through research, discovery type of things, where you're trying to uncover maybe product fit or the state of your data. Is this even feasible? And you're trying to get more certain requirements. But at a certain point, they're always going to be uncertain, right? Again, the agility of our work, we're going to uncover things that just through the essential complexity of what we're about to do, we don't know until we go and do it. And that is going to happen. Omitted activities. You just forgot something. That happens all the time. No matter how many times you go through it, get a second pair of eyes, people forget things. We're all human. It happens. And you will omit activities from your estimate. Subjectivity and bias. Probably my favorite one here that creeps in a lot in estimates is this concept of a second system effect. Second system effect is where you've gone through and successfully done something once, and you might have an overinflated sense of confidence that you understand that problem now, or that you understand how to do it. Oh, I've done that before. I know exactly how to do that, and it's going to go exactly how I did before, right? Wrong, generally. You're going to be overconfident that second time you go to do something. Many other types of bias, I'm not going to list all of them here, but those creep into these estimates. The other one, off-the-cuff estimation. Oh my goodness, I do this all the time and need to just continually remind myself to pause and wait. A lot of times, I even did this to one of my poor employees on Monday. I said, how long do you think that'll take? And kind of pushed for an off-the-cuff estimate. Try to resist those knee-jerk reflexes of giving an estimate in the moment. These estimates, as we talked about, often get conflated for commitments. And once that number is out of your mouth, you don't control it anymore. That can then be made into a commitment. And if you didn't pause and take the time to think about it, well, gee, I really hope that doesn't come back to bite you, right? Again, ask for some time if you like. Chances are you're going to be allowed time. If you're like, well, I don't know, right? Can I have some time to think about it? I'd be hard-pressed to think of a situation where someone wouldn't give you that grace and time to actually give this due diligence and think through an estimate. Because again, these can have really far-reaching ramifications later on down the line, especially for really large units of work or something that you may have, again, through subjectivity or bias, really underestimated the problem statement. Unwarranted precision. This is another favorite. We talked about ranges, but also within your range, if you give unwarranted precision in those numbers and say, oh, I think that'll take 25.2 to 28.3 hours. That's ridiculous. Don't give that precision. People mistake precision for accuracy all the time. Try to round off those numbers. Even in your ranges, try to stick with big round numbers, right? I would even say stay away from like the number 4 to 40, right? Maybe bump that up to 10. Give it a nice big round number. Because again, if you get too precise and, that'll take 9 to 13 hours, in the back of people's minds, they'll think, wow, that's really precise. They must know what they're talking about, and I'm going to expect that to be really accurate. So again, in how you communicate these things can really impact how people receive them and how they then handle those and expect things from you when you're just guessing, right? We're just guessing, and we're all bad at that. So don't give people unnecessary ammunition, I guess. Mythical Man Month. This was called out in just the previous talk. Phenomenal book, by the way, in case anyone hasn't read it. I recommend you go out and buy it right now and read through that at least once. I actually read through it about once a year. It's one of my favorite books. But in there, a big thing, many things that they talk about, that Fred Brooks talks about, is this concept of effort versus duration. If I give an estimate to someone that I think it'll take 4 to 8 months to accomplish something, given a certain set of engineering resources. And I've even had this in the last 6 months. Someone says, well, if I give you another engineer, we can have that time then, right? That's more people means less time, and that'll just get done quicker. No, not always. There are a lot of different factors that go into teamwork, that go into communication, paths of communication, just working patterns, core knowledge. Many of the talks this morning talk about this long tail of building productivity through teamwork and culture and communication, and these things take time. You can't just swap in and out resources and just bring down your estimate, right? There's a lot more to these estimates and to the work that we do than just plug and play resources on a spreadsheet. So that one comes up a lot, is effort versus duration. And also, in that same vein, make sure that you understand that when you give an estimate of effort, that you caveat it and give that nuance of duration, right? If I say something might take 40 hours of effort, well, you're not sitting there at your keyboard coding 40 hours a day or 40 hours a week straight. You have other duties to your jobs usually. There are other life circumstances that come up. There are other things that happen. There might even be some phase-gated steps to what you're about to do that, oh, well, once I deploy this, it's got to sit out in a process for a day, and then I can come back to it and finish up, right? And that adds to your overall duration. So make sure that when you can, you're also communicating duration, not just how much effort, but when something will actually be done in calendar days. Another source of error, peer pressure, just straight estimation peer pressure. I've had this a number of times where I'll deliver an estimate after going through a lot of work, some spreadsheets, back and forth with people. You give a final range to someone and they say, "Ooh, that looks a little high. I don't think that's right. Can you lower it?" No, you can't. I often like to say, the estimate is the estimate. I'm sorry if you don't like it, but that is the estimate. That's not to say we can't change the estimate, but it just means we can't arbitrarily change the outcome, right? To any process, if we want to change the outcome, we have to change some inputs. So what changes on the front end to get a different outcome on the back end, right? That's what the conversation becomes then, rather than just, oh yeah, let me knock down 2 weeks of time off that estimate because you just didn't like the number, right? No, do not bow to peer pressure in estimation. You need to go through that process, go through the due diligence, and make sure that you stick to your estimate. Because again, at the end of the day, it is a guess. It's probably wrong somewhere, but you have the most context to it. You did the work to go through and understand what that number is. Defend it. And that's fine. You can go back and change it through changing the inputs, but don't just arbitrarily knock off hours on the back end. And this last bit, source of estimation error, is really just more a fact of life, is that really there is a limit to how well things can go. It can only go so well. The sky is the limit, right? That's still a limit. It can only be so high, but there is no limit to how poorly something can go. It's just true. At a certain point, you kind of have to call things and kind of cut your losses and call it dead. But there's a long tail of what can go wrong in a project, and we are awful at trying to predict all that. We're all optimists. We all think that things can be solved, and we can make everyone happy, get our solutions out there, and everything will be great. Everything will go wonderful. But that almost never happens. A lot of things can and will go wrong, and there's no limit to that. So, pretty despairing. Hopefully this doesn't get you down too much. There's a lot of ways things can go wrong, a lot of error that can creep into these estimates when we think about the work that we're going to do and trying to communicate that and come up with a number. But there are ways we can mitigate it, right? So we're all bad at estimation. There are a lot of things out there that are going to trip us up. But there are techniques to help. We can get better at estimating. We can get more confident in our estimates, at least, into what went into it. And we can get better at communicating that. So some of the techniques that have helped, really simple one off the top, count and compute. If you don't know where to start in an estimate, if you've been given something greenfield and, hey, can you come up with an estimate for this? Just start by counting things. What should you count? Literally anything. Can you count something? Start there, right? If you received maybe some low-fidelity wireframes, start counting screens, start counting buttons, form fields, anything. Count fields in a database, rows in a database. If it's an existing site or a web application, can you count how many active users are in there? Just start counting. Because from there, you're going to start inferring meaning to what you're seeing, right? It's a great place to start from. From there, you can start computing and extrapolating and inferring meaning from those counts. Because at some point, you're going to have to extrapolate. You're going to have to get away from a hard count and start getting a bit more abstract. And it's okay to do that. Start computing things and coming up with metrics around what you see. Because that'll help you give scale, that'll help you give an idea of the problem that you're going about doing, and you'll start to think through some technical things as well. But start by counting. That's a great way to start estimating. Another way, historical data. This one can be helpful, but some real nuance and caveats here on historical data. Kind of the financial prospectus caveat of, past performance does not predict the future. Same with historical data. Historical data works really well if you have, again, an established team that already knows how they're working with each other. They have a process down with an established product that they understand well, and they understand their problem domain well. And it's a similar problem that they're going up against. That is a time when historical data is great. When things match up, when you have a good running team, a long history, and things are pretty consistent from their day-to-day, historical data can be fantastic for assisting in an estimation process. And I say assisting because you don't just want to go and grab historical data and slap it down and say, there's your estimate, right? In fact, oftentimes I will save historical data until after I've come up with an estimate to compare them and say, okay, well, how does this stack up to some historical data? And is there anything that might surprise me? I forgot about that, right? The omitting activities that I talked about earlier, some estimation activity. Historical data can help just sanity check your estimate. But again, it only really works well if you understand the problem domain and the team for which that data represents. If it's like some other team that, they worked on something similar, I'm going to use their numbers. No, walk away. It's almost meaningless to you at that point. The third one, expert judgment. So this one I like to say is similar to if you've ever gone to a great butcher, longtime butcher, they can just eyeball 1 pound of meat. I don't know if you've ever witnessed it. It's a glorious thing to behold, honestly. Like, I'll take a pound of meat, and they're just one eye, cut it, put it on the scale. It's almost exactly a pound, right? After a certain amount of time, you all become experts in a certain area of things you do. And if you're not an expert in something, chances are you know who is or how to find that expert. Ask for help, right? Don't do these things alone. Go find an expert in an area. You might be estimating for an overall body of work that requires multiple disciplines, and you probably aren't an expert in all of them. Go find an expert and ask their judgment in helping to estimate these things, right? Don't go it alone. My favorite is decomposition. You've seen that a lot actually in some of our presentations already. Breaking things down into smaller and smaller steps, right? That is one of the best ways to start estimating as well. Take your big problem and just start breaking it down. What I do from there, after I've broken it down, is in those broken down steps, give my ranged estimates. Then I have a measure of variance, risk, and uncertainty by line item that I've decomposed within my steps. And I can zero in on the areas that I have the highest uncertainty, the highest risk, and I can have a conversation, an informed conversation, about if we need to spend more time to understand those risks, to uncover those risks. Is there a decision that needs to be made? Is there more expertise that needs to be brought in? Or are we just comfortable with that risk and we just go forward knowing that it exists, right? All of those things are an option. But we couldn't have done that if we didn't break it down and decompose it first and give a ranged estimate within that decomposition. Proxy-based estimation. This is one that when I say, I'm going to talk about software estimation, that people almost immediately jump to. Story points. That is a way of estimating. Much later in the game, usually once you're in the process of actually building. T-shirt sizing is another great way. I think early on, I love to do t-shirt sizing. Like when product comes to me and says, hey, what's the relative effort on something like this? I'll go with t-shirt sizing because they can't take that and turn that into a number. So there's a lot of different techniques that can help you to estimate, to communicate your levels of effort and estimation. But again, try to avoid off-the-cuff estimation and try to avoid single-point estimates. They will get you in trouble. So, throughout all of this, just remember that, again, don't estimate in a vacuum. Don't go it alone. The worst estimates I've seen are when someone goes off in a corner, thinks they know everything, puts together an estimate for another team that isn't theirs that's building it and say, here's the estimate, go get it done. It should only take you about 2 weeks. Trust me, I did the math, right? No, that's awful. This should be collaborative. You should be working with the people, hopefully, that are actually doing the work in some sense. But if not, again, try to get experts involved in the conversation, try to break things down, and keep those sources of estimation error in mind, right? Know that you are bad at this and that the number you're going to come up with is likely wrong in some way, right? Be very defensive in how you go about creating this and try to really think through it thoroughly. Things will change. The agility of our work, right? We've talked about that. The essential complexity of what we're about to do. There are just things that you can't guess how hard it'll be. You can't have known that that was going to happen until you go about doing it, right? At a certain point, you just need to be willing to accept that. And that's often a lot of time why estimates are wrong, is just because, well, we discovered something new. Okay, that's fine. Adapt, come up with a new estimate, keep moving. And be willing to throw it away. Right? That's that long tail that I was talking about. There's no limit to how poorly something can go. And at a certain point, you do need to be willing and able to just cut your losses and go. An estimate gets you to a commitment, right? Is what I talked about there. And without the estimate, we can't commit to something. But even once you've committed to it, hopefully you've given yourself enough grace off of your estimate to meet that commitment. But again, be willing to throw it away. Sometimes things just go so poorly that you need to stop and move on, or just regroup, come up with a new estimate. Question your parameters, right? Again, I covered this at the top around uncertain requirements. This is a big one, is people assuming that the estimate is 100% concrete, right? Like if a team comes in and says, oh, that's the estimate? Oh, that's crazy talk, or that's wrong, or oh, I think I can get that done quicker, right? Well, sure, again, we've all acknowledged the estimate's likely wrong. It's really just to facilitate a conversation. It's to give, hopefully, an accurate idea of the level of effort, but there's going to be something wrong in there. And people should question it. People should question those parameters, just as you should have questioned parameters as you're coming up with an estimate, right? Because chances are that specification wasn't right, and or there was something in that three-legged stool early on that maybe you didn't quite uncover. So timeline, features, budget. Was there something in there that you missed that you could have made life easier for yourself? Constantly be questioning those parameters to feed back into your estimate, because you'll likely find a happy path through questioning all of those parameters and being agile in the work that you do. Small a agile, right? The quality of your work, not the big A proper noun agile. Identify and communicate risks, right? That's maybe the biggest purpose of estimates, I think, is to identify, communicate risk. I said it before, hopefully I'm really driving the point home. Ranges are going to be your friend there. The best way to identify and communicate risk, right? Don't worry about too wide of ranges. It's okay. Sometimes a range is really wide because you just don't know, and that is okay to admit. Because from there, then you can spend time, maybe, if you want to spend the time, to understand, or for someone else to come in and help. But we can't do that if we don't communicate that unknown and that risk to begin with. And then the final one as well, when we think about an estimate, we're trying to estimate getting to done. What is done? Done is such a loaded word. Even if we have a definition of done at maybe an epic feature or task level, or even a project level, done is very squishy. Done has a long tail, and depending on the stakeholder in charge, they might have a completely different idea of done. Done is almost always a negotiation. That's one of the best ways you can hit your estimates, honestly. Done is a negotiation. Is figuring out, is this good enough? Does this meet the required outcome? Have we hit our target, or are we now just, having nice to haves? Oh, well, it'd be nice to have this. It'd be nice to have that. Oh, can we maybe tweak this? And now we're 3 months past the estimate. Oh, your estimate was completely wrong. Well, because we were done 3 months ago and we've just been working on it, right? So done is a negotiation. Be willing to kind of enter into that negotiation and understand that. And again, think back to all of these things that we just talked about in trying to get a better estimate, trying to commit to it, and then deliver on that commitment. And that's it. Hopefully you're all better estimators now.